Hi folks, HR Funk here with an optic review, or actually a double optics review. And no, I'm not saying that because I'm having double vision. I have a very strict rule not to indulge in any bourbon before 9:30-ish or so in the morning, and that's still a little while away. No, the reason I'm saying a double optics review is because I actually have two items here, both from Vector Optics, and I've reviewed some Vector Optics products in the past, and I found them to be pretty good, particularly for the price at which they're listed. And in this case, I've got one of their micro prism scopes and also a 3-power magnifier. And in this video, we're going to take a close-up look at these optics. I'm going to tell you about some of the advantages of a prism optic. We're going to head out to the range and do some shooting, and we'll see how they perform. So here we go. And here's the first up-close look at the subjects of today's video. In front, we have the Vector Optics Paragon 1x18 micro prism scope. And backing it up, literally, also from Vector Optics, is their Paragon 3x18 power micro magnifier. And we've been hearing a lot about Prism optics lately, or at least I have, which I find interesting because Prism optics have been around for a long, long time, but they seem to be enjoying sort of a resurgence in popularity. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that red dot sights, particularly on rifles such as this, have become so popular. But the Prism sights actually offer one or two advantages over your typical red dot optic, and I'll cover those as the video goes on. And before I get into the various advantages and disadvantages of Prism sights as opposed to red dot sights, let me first give you the rundown on these two optics, beginning with the Paragon 1x18 power micro prism scope itself. The first thing I'll say about this is it is very compact, considering that this is a prism optic, meaning that light does not travel directly from the objective lens to the ocular lens in a straight line. Rather, along the way, it travels through a prism. And even so, this optic is only 2.39 inches long, it is 1.99 inches wide, and 2.62 inches tall, and the weight is only 6.29 ounces. So not bad at all, considering that we do have some extra things going on in there over and above what we typically see with a red dot sight. The Paragon Micro Prism comes with a 1913 rail compatible mount. It also comes with an additional riser, as well as a lens cleaning cloth and hardware for installing and adjusting the optic. The Paragon Micro Prism is constructed of 6061 aluminum, and as you can see, it is finished in a black anodizing. As the nomenclature implies, the Paragon Micro Prism has an 18mm objective lens. The glass is fully multi-coated for image clarity and light transmission. This optic is also shock-proof, fog-proof, and incursion-proof to IPX6-7 standards, meaning it's completely sealed from dust and airborne particles, and it can also be submerged in water to a depth of 1 meter for at least 30 minutes. And we will be testing the waterproof qualities of the Paragon Micro Prism as the video continues. The reticle of this optic is powered by a CR2032 battery that is stored inside this compartment. It has 8 brightness settings, the first 2 of which are compatible with night vision equipment. The latter are obviously for normal daylight conditions. The controls are on top of the sight. There is a plus button in the front and a minus button in the rear. To turn the reticle on, simply press and release the plus button. To turn the reticle off, press and hold the minus button. And to adjust the brightness levels, obviously, one click of the plus button will increase the brightness 1 level. One click of the minus button will decrease the brightness level. And a nice thing about the reticle in this sight is it can be viewed with either red or green illumination, and the way to change that is to simply press and hold the plus button, and it will toggle back and forth between red and green. By the way, it does not tell you how to do that in the user's manual. I had to figure that out on my own, so just be aware if you get one, that's the way it's done. The Paragon Micro Prism features a fast focus eyepiece that you see here for focusing the reticle inside, and also it has an eye relief of just under 4 inches, 3.74 inches for the eye relief with this optic. And here's a quick look at the windage and elevation turrets on this optic. The Paragon Micro Prism has an advertised adjustment range of 100 minutes of angle for both elevation and windage, but I can tell you when I zeroed this optic, I didn't use anywhere near that. It took me about 3 shots to get a good zero on this optic, and I might have used 3 or 4 minutes of angle in that process. There are click adjustments in these turrets, and each click is both tactile and audible, and each click moves your point of impact 1 minute of angle, either windage or elevation, respectively. The Paragon Micro Prism is a non-magnified optic, meaning when you look through here, your target image looks exactly the same through the optic as it does when you're looking at it with your naked eye, which is great for up-close shooting for very fast target acquisition and getting fast, effective shots on that target. But if distances start to stretch out and you need a little bit more precision in your shooting, that's where the magnifier comes in. This, again, is the Paragon Micro Magnifier. It has a 3-power magnification range, so when we put this in place, all of a sudden you go from 0 magnification to your target looking 3 times bigger than it did to your naked eye. Many of the things that I just told you about the Paragon Microprism sight also apply to the Mini Magnifier. It is also constructed of 6061 aluminum. It is also incursion proof to IPX67 standards. It has its own fast focus eyepiece. Again, this is just for focusing the image of the reticle when you're looking at it. That's not to focus the image of the target. The Mini Magnifier has its own windage and elevation adjustments. That's not to change the point of impact of the bullet. That is to make sure you can center the reticle when you're looking through the lens of the Mini Magnifier. The Paragon Mini Magnifier also features fully multi-coated optics for image clarity and light transmission. When you purchase it, it comes with an additional riser, just like the sight did. It also comes with the flip-up mount that you see here, and this is nice. I reviewed a similar optic setup a while back, and with that particular one, you physically had to push the sight out of place, or excuse me, the magnifier out of place, and then you had to release a latch and put it back into position. With this one, I simply push this button on the side, if I can find it, and the magnifier moves out of place for fast up-close shots, and if you need it, all you have to do is grab it and put it right back in place, and you're ready to start shooting. This should do nothing to change the point of impact of your bullet, whether the magnifier is in place or not in place. Dimensionally, the Mini Magnifier is 2.75 inches long, it is 1.4 inches high, and it weighs 7.6 ounces. Both of these optics are covered under a no questions asked lifetime warranty from Vector Optics, and again, considering the price at which these things sell, having a lifetime warranty is pretty impressive. So, advantages of a Prism sight over a red dot optic. The first thing that I'll tell you is a Prism sight can have magnification. Now, this one does not. This is a 1-power optic, so when you look through it, there's no magnification to the image whatsoever. But you can get these in something like 3-power as opposed to a red dot optic, which I don't think you can get, at least I can't think of one that has any sort of magnification built into it. Probably, however, the biggest advantage I see with the Prism optic has to do with people with an astigmatism. Since the Prism optic uses an etched reticle which is illuminated rather than an image of a reticle that is projected from an emitter onto a lens inside the optic, you get a much clearer image of your reticle with the Prism optic. Again, we do have a fast focus eyepiece here, so you can dial that in perfectly and get a very crisp, clear image of your reticle when you look through this prism. So I'm having my usual run of luck when it comes to trying to get an image through an optic, but here I think I have a pretty good look at the reticle inside the Paragon Micro Prism. Currently it is not illuminated, which is another advantage to the etched reticle. If the shooter doesn't want to use illumination for any reason, they have just a simple black reticle like we used to have all the time in scopes and other optics. But if illumination is desired, simply pressing the button will illuminate the reticle. And you can see here it is red. And I'm going to turn the illumination down just a bit so we don't get any distortion. That looks pretty good right there. And you can see this is a segmented circle dot reticle. The outer circle is 68 minutes of angle in diameter, and the dot in the center is 2 minutes of angle. So you get both the large circle for up close, fast target acquisition and fast shooting, but you get that precise aiming point of a 2 minute of angle dot in the center for longer range precision shooting. As I said before, to change the color of the reticle, I'm going to simply press and hold the plus button, and we now have green illumination that you see there. And as always, I have to add, when you're looking through this optic with your eye, it looks much better than it does in the camera image. Moving over to our red dot optic, you can see that currently it's not illuminated because it's not turned on. So there is nothing to use for aiming whatsoever. If the red dot optic loses power, either the battery dies or something happens to the electronics, and the emitter is no longer projecting that reticle onto the internal lens, then there is nothing to use for aiming. All you have is a very large ghost ring. When we turn it on, and I'll turn this up bright enough to where you can see it, then we have the reticle that you can see right there. But for anyone with an astigmatism, and I have a slight astigmatism, so when I look through this optic, the dot does not look perfectly round. Whereas when I look at the reticle in the micro prism optic, that is a very sharp, very well-defined reticle. So hopefully you can see the differences and the advantages between the prism optic and the standard red dot optic just by this little bit of an illustration. So let's take a look at the performance from this vector optics combo. And by the way, with this target, ignore these stickers and some extra holes you see in there and one thing and another. This is a recycled target that I was going to use only for zeroing the Paragon micro prism, and then I was going to replace this target with a different one and shoot some groups to see what kind of accuracy we could expect. But the groups on this zeroing target ended up being so good that I decided to go ahead and just use it. After zeroing at 50 yards, this was my final 3-shot group that I fired using the 3-power magnifier, and I decided that was good enough to move out to 100 yards, and I've got a group that's, I think I'll measure it, less than an inch, so about 2 minutes of angle from that distance of 50 yards. And it looks like about 3/4 of an inch center to center. So actually about 1.5 minutes of angle from that distance of 50 yards. Then I moved out to 100 yards, and let me change the camera angle. So I moved the target out to 100 yards. I did not change the elevation setting or anything else on the optics, and I fired this 3-shot group of 100 yards. This is actually slightly less than 3/4 of an inch at that distance. So the accuracy that I was seeing is very, very good with the micro prism optic and the 3-power magnifier. But I also wanted to try a group of 100 yards that was not using the magnifier. So I just had the micro prism optic sans magnification, and I dropped my point of aim down to about the waistline of this target. And again, I'll change the position of the camera. So here's my 3-shot 100-yard group sans magnification. And it does look like without the magnifier in place, the group moves slightly off to the right. But truthfully, at 100 yards with no magnification whatsoever, it is much more difficult to keep an absolute precise point of aim. And I really suspect this is just more a reflection of my inability to maintain that very precise point of aim as opposed to any actual change in the windage or the point of impact of the optics as a result of not having the magnifier. And again, I'll change the magnification, I guess. If we move that 3-shot group up to here, if I'd maintained the same point of aim for this 3-shot group that I did for this one, this group would have been right about here. So still, even with no magnification, we're talking about good effective lung shots on this target. I don't think there was any change in point of impact due to moving the magnifier out of place. So this is where the story gets kind of strange. After completing those groups that I just showed you on the target, I packed up for that day and came home with the idea that I was going to subject the micro prism optic and the magnifier to some more testing at a later time. As I was unpacking everything from my Jeep, somehow a strap from my backpack or something caught this rifle and pulled it out of my Jeep, and it fell to the concrete floor in my garage. And do y'all know that sick feeling you get when you hear one of your firearms clattering on concrete? That was the way I felt that day. And I picked up the rifle, and there's very little visible damage to the rifle at all. In fact, the main damage that I see seems to be to the prism optic. And I'll show you a close-up view so you can see exactly where the damage is on here. So it looks like the rifle optic combination actually landed optic first, with the microprism taking the brunt of the impact. So I thought that's going to do it for my drop testing. That was an actual real-world calamity. It was not anything that was contrived for video purposes to try to test the optic. But the following day, I had to go back out to the range then to see if, after that drop on concrete, the optics maintained their point of impact, and I fired additional 3-shot groups at a distance of 100 yards, and I'll give you a close-up look at the targets, both the 3-shot group with the magnifier in place that I fired at 100 yards, as well as the 3-shot group that I fired sans magnifier. And as far as I could tell, there was no change in point of impact, although I didn't shoot quite as good that day, and the groups that resulted were not quite as tight as the groups I fired the day before. Again, that's on me, but as best I could tell, there was no point of impact shift as a result of the microprism optic hitting my concrete floor in the garage. With the drop test out of the way, we're now on to the next phase of testing, which is the harsh environments test. And I'm going to put the optics and my AR upper inside my freezer. It's going to stay there overnight, and after about 24 hours I'll pull it out and we'll see how the vector microprism and the magnifier are doing at that point. So it's been about 24 hours since I placed my upper with the vector optics sight and magnifier into my freezer. Let's go ahead and pull everything out and see what's happening here. And I can't see anything through the magnifier. Let me move that. And yes, hopefully you're going to be able to see this. The sight is still on. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to get you a view of the reticle. I could see it when I was looking through there. You can see a little bit of a green light back in there, but the reticle is still activated. So now we'll go to the next phase of the test, and I'm going to be placing this just after coming out of the freezer into warm water. The temperature of the water is about 125 degrees Fahrenheit, and we'll do that right now. Here is our bucket of warm water. Let's check the temperature. Still right at 125 degrees Fahrenheit. This test has been known to destroy more than one optic, and I'm going to have to find something to prop that up so it stays in there just like that. I don't want to submerge the whole upper. So give me just a moment. I'm going to grab something quick so this can be propped on it, and I'll start the video back up. It turns out my elementary school ruler that you see here made a perfect prop for the upper. So I'm going to leave this submerged for half an hour, and if you remember, the waterproof, or I should say the incursion rating of these optics is IPX67, which means it can be submerged to a depth of 1 meter for at least a half an hour. Now this is not 1 meter, it's more like 1.5 inches or something like that. But I'll come back and we'll pull this out in a half an hour and we'll see how the optics are doing then. So the Vector Optics microprism and mini magnifier have been submerged in the water for exactly half an hour. I put them in here at 9:20 and it's now 9:50. So let's see how they're doing after all of that. And I can still see some illumination coming through there. And I still see the reticle. It's not in focus for you. Maybe if I bring it a little closer here. So very impressive. This was an extreme change in condition for these optics. They went from 0 degrees in an air environment instantly, or virtually instantly, as long as it took me to walk here from the freezer, which was maybe 5 seconds. It went from that 0 degree air environment to a 125 degree environment submerged in water, and everything appears to be fine. I don't see any fogging. Let me look through here. No, I see water drops on the lenses that I need to wipe off, but there's no fogging that I can see of any kind. That is tremendous. And again, let me see if I can get any kind of focus going on here. Nope, camera's not going to let me do it. So let me wipe off the lenses. I'll reinstall the upper on the lower, and we'll take another look through here after I get everything wiped off. So I've now dried all the water drops off the lenses of both optics, and this is a look through the mini magnifier and also through the micro prism optic itself. And I am having to take this image through the magnifier. I had to do the same thing the last time when I was showing you just the reticle. Reason being, with the magnifier in place on the rail of my rifle, there's no room to get the camera in behind there to get a view through just the micro prism sight. So for that reason, this is a magnified view of the reticle, but it also shows up pretty well in the camera, I think, this way. And you can see there's absolutely no fogging internally. Now, the target you see out there in front of the rifle looks a little blurry. That's because it's a magnified image of that target at a very close distance. I put it there just to give some contrast so you can see the reticle easier. But I'm very impressed by the way both of these optics withstood that extreme change in conditions. There's no internal fogging that I can see. There's nothing else indicating any water got inside. Both optics appear to be just fine. So I only have one thing left to test, and I'm going to have to head back out to the range to do that. I'm going to go back out and try a couple more groups and make sure the optics have, or I should say, the micro prism itself has maintained its zero, because the magnifier really doesn't have to maintain zero. It just has to keep the reticle centered inside of its field of view. In any case, I'll head back out to the range, we'll do some shooting, and we'll see if everything is still hitting same point of aim as it did before, and if so, that is an extremely impressive performance by these optics. So I've just returned from the range after firing the final confirmation groups with the Vector Optics Prism sight and mini magnifier, and this is a brisk 27-degree day here in northern Ohio. And normally 27 degrees is not that cold around these parts, but there is a stiff wind coming out of the north today, and it was unpleasant to be out there. I don't know what the wind chill is, but it's cold. So I got things set up, fired my groups, got everything packed up, and got out of there about as fast as I could. But after I set up at a distance of 100 yards, I started out this time around firing without the magnifier in place, and I was again firing 3-shot groups. And for the 3-shot groups with no magnifier, I was firing at the body of this target. And I tried to color the shot holes in with a Sharpie to make them easier to see. I'm not sure I was entirely successful in that effort. But with no magnifier, using just the Prism sight, the shots hit here, here, and then I pulled one a little bit low down there, and I think that was just because I was working with no magnification at 100 yards. Then I moved the magnifier into place and fired 3 headshots. Those struck here, here, and here, so 3 very nice headshots. Even though I was using relatively low magnification at 100 yards, those all stayed in the A box right there, and I was pretty happy they did, because that meant I could grab everything and get out of the cold and come back here and finish this video. So folks, this is now the second or third time I have tested products from Vector Optics, and I've got to say, they have pretty well impressed me. Both the Paragon Micro Prism Scope and the Paragon Mini Magnifier stood up very well to this testing that I put them through. The only damage really is the relatively superficial damage that was sustained by the sight when it fell out of my Jeep onto the concrete floor of my garage, and that was a fall of about 3 feet or so, so it wasn't an insignificant fall. But otherwise, nothing else bothered it. The cold temperatures in the freezer, the warm water, the submersion for half an hour, all of that. These sights, or I should say these optics, made it through all of those tests with flying colors. Obviously, the accuracy that I'm capable of attaining with these optics is very good. So I would say for more information, go by the Vector Optics website. You can get a look at these optics as well as everything else they offer in their line. You can see the pricing. And if you have any questions or comments, you can definitely put them in the website and they will get back to you. I believe there's an automated system there that will answer your questions within a relatively short period of time after you post them. In any case, if you have any questions or comments about this video, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, stop by my website, hrfunk.com, and take a look at the news and information page to see all the latest things that are going on with me and the channel. And also check out the products page, because there are a lot of products like these that I have reviewed, and the manufacturers have links on the product page, and there's information below those links that'll save you some money if you decide to make a purchase. See you next time, folks. And until then, good shooting. Bye-bye.